Thank you for such a warm welcome, and even listening to you, Program Director, on your introduction, I feel to a large extent that if I may quote the words of Swami Chinmayananda, he said that I am definitely not the pointed, I am just the pointer. Before I begin, I would like to say that I am nothing but just an instrument, and an instrument of the divine hand only. And we choose what instrument we would like to be. So we can either be an instrument that not work, or we can be an instrument that says, "O universal consciousness, or consciousness of the divine, you work as you wish, and I am here and available." So thank you again, Program Director. I bring greetings from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and I pay my respects to Gurudev, to our very dear Pro-Vice Chancellor, who I first met over the phone and just had conversations at first, to our Vice Chancellor, to our Registrar, to the management and administrative team of this very esteemed university, to faculty, to all the helpers, all the volunteers who have met over the past few days. Thank you very much. I had one of the most amazing experiences here, very humbling for me. So I thank you for having me here at this Jubilee celebration. I came with my family because when you ask my sons where is their favorite part of this planet, they will tell you Ganga. So there is no way that I was able to leave them behind. So they were meant to come and be part of this experience. And I often tell them that that experience is not intellectual and must never be intellectual, but it is an experiential reality. Just sitting on the banks of Ganga, listening to the voice of Ganga as you look at that water flow from the great Himalayas. That must not be intellectualism. That must be experiential. A different version, a different level of such reality. 26 years ago, I was a student with no idea as to what really was the meaning of life. I came from a very rough background where I grew up in what India would call a slum, with one parent, a father who died when I was age 3 due to abuse of alcohol. I grew with 2 brothers who are cocaine addicts. One was unfortunately murdered. And I questioned the purpose of life. And to a large extent, I lost the meaning of life. With no inheritance, with no funding to attain any level of education, I had to find a way to just make it. And I cried out, where is this God if there is a God? Are you somewhere out there? And honestly, I got very little answers. And at age 21, I was at the university studying part-time, so I would work during the day as a gardener, cleaning the lawns, cutting the lawns and those things. So I did that during the day so I could study at night. And I met an old man who was not a member of the university. He was literally walking through. And he looked at me and he said, "What are you studying?" So I said, I had no idea who was this individual, right? So I looked at him and I answered, I said, well, sir, I'm studying accounting. He said, so do you consider yourself educated? So I said, actually, no, I consider myself to be quite ignorant and really suffering from low self-esteem. He said, do you know what is the problem with educational institutions today? I said, I have no idea. He said, they are certifying, and the more certified people we get, the less intelligent they become. I said, I have no idea what you are talking about. What do you mean? He said, when you become certified and you start believing that your certificate is intelligence, that your certificate grants you knowledge, then you close your mind to the greater knowledge that exists. So I said, are you a lecturer here or something? He said, no, I'm just passing through. And he was just passing through. That remained with me for many years. And I stumbled upon some works of Swami Ramakrishna. So I'm really not here by chance today. And I started reading further on the works and the teachings of Swami Vivekananda. So I'm really not here by chance today. It is by divine orchestration. And I begin at that point to realize, where does the education come from? I started with the most fundamental and basic questions that any human being should ask themselves. Who am I? And I began at that stage to realize that I am definitely not this body. And I'm definitely not the subtle body. I'm not the mind either. I am not the buddhi. I'm not the intellect. So then what am I? And the answer came, which simply was, remove all that I think that I am. And that which remains when nothing else remains, that I am. So I said, do you mean that I need to reverse my entire process of education in order to really be educated? And the answer was yes. Reverse what I thought to be real and realize it is unreal, and then let reality set in. And that became my journey in terms of what and how I started viewing this life to be. I entered into the world of business, and in so doing, I realized that the world of accounting, the world of business, which I started to grow in, did not depend upon just sheer intellectualism, but it depended on the source of thought. And the source of thought could not have been the mind. The mind is a conduit of thought, but it's not the source. If we are able to tap into the source of the thought, then we are able to tap into the fullness of the potential that exists. And I said, oh, what then happens if I think? If the mind is not the source of thought, and there is a source that is greater than the mind, and I use the mind and misuse the mind and abuse the mind, then what happens? Does it affect me alone? And I came to the realization that if you take a pebble and you throw that pebble in a pond, it is not just the ripples you see, but the entire field of the pond is affected if you look at it from physics. The entire field is affected by one drop of pebble. By every thought by every word, and by every action, we affect the entire field of the universe. Matter and antimatter, everything is affected. So we must understand the source. I started exploring further that source and how do I get there. And I realized that I get there through having the right knowledge. The knowledge of this cosmic divine. Whatever name we give to this cosmic divine, we call it God consciousness, we may call it universal consciousness, divine consciousness, but that absolute reality that exists, we must tap into that. So I started tapping into it, and it started guiding my life. I then became a diplomat, and I thought that if I just represent a country, then I am failing at my job. I must not just represent Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean. And I definitely do not represent me. But that everything that I do must be a reflection of that divine consciousness. In all aspects of my job. When I came to India, my Prime Minister asked me, what is my plan and what is my strategy? And I said to him, sir, my strategic imperatives are very clear. It is based upon three. It is based upon one, trade and investments, which we do a lot of work in. We work with the CII, we work with the FLIGI, we work with the PhD Chamber of Industry and Commerce. So we work with a lot of big organizations. In the area of culture, we work with the Department of Culture in Uttar Pradesh. I have met with the Minister of Culture at Uttarakhand, and we are beginning to explore areas that we can work on. My third area was in the area of educational collaboration, which we have a lot of work going on between Trinidad and Tobago, and Trinidad and Tobago lead in the wider Caribbean in this particular area. So last year, as an example, working through the Ayodhya Research Institute, we had 3 Ramlila training courses virtually in Trinidad and Tobago, Suriname and Guyana to revive Ramlila. Then I took the initiative to not just do a Ramlila training, but then have a conference on the Ramayana and the application of the Ramayana in today's corporate world, in today's political world, and in today's educational system. How does the Ramayana apply to us in our modern age? But my fourth area is like the Turiya, which I did not tell my Prime Minister. The fourth area was to ensure that in each of the 3 areas that I work in, the presence of that divine consciousness must be first and foremost working through it. If that divine consciousness is not there, we are doomed to fail, guaranteed. And I've met, while I was in India and South Africa, I've met many universities, I've met many professors and vice chancellors. And many invitations I have turned down because I saw a massive problem that is being generated in this world. And I saw the lack of solution in going forward. We live in a very peculiar time right now, where the world is changing, and our mindset must be on the post-pandemic world, and also the world after. What are we producing? And if we are just producing an education, a certification, then we are only 50% there. What we are supposed to do is ensure But as we grow that individual, the totality of that individual grows. It is possible to have a 200% potential, which is 100% within and 100% outside. We can have 100% when we venture inward, when we tap into that supreme self, when we realize that absolute reality. And from that realization, we unfold outside of ourselves the greatest of our potential. In anything that we do, we are guided by that absolute reality. So therefore, we don't just have a good doctor, we have a doctor who is good. We do not have just a good accountant, we have an accountant who is divinely good. We don't have just a good politician, we have politicians who are good and who live to be good and who will do good and do good for the greater use of humanity and not themselves. That is the fullness of education. And when I came across the work of this particular university, after Dr. Pandey contacted me, and I read about it, and I read about Dr. Pandey, and I told my wife that despite the fact that I had little interest, or basically no interest in traveling, there is a greater call. And when that call comes, we just answer yes, because we are instruments. We are not the pointed, we are simply the pointer to the greater consciousness that exists. And why did I come? I came for one main reason, and to know me, which Dr. Pandey and some of the staff spent some time with me. I am not a tourist. I have little interest in just venturing here, there, and everywhere. There is purpose. There must be purpose. And we build according to purpose. I came because this university represented the future. It represents what this post-pandemic and the future world requires. Individuals who will go out there into the world and operate from the fullness of a potential that taps into the untapped source of power. I saw it here. I saw a level of humility amongst everyone, from the Pro-Vice Chancellor to even the driver and every instrument finding their rightful place to make the machinery work well. I saw compassion and I saw love. I saw benevolence and I saw kindness. And it was so beautiful. And I looked at Ganga, and I saw Ganga flow from the hills of the Himalayas. And I thought to myself, as Ganga represents that nourishment from the hills of the Himalayas where the great masters study, so must this university on the banks of Ganga reach the world, reach the Caribbean, through Trinidad and Tobago, through Guyana, through Suriname, through Jamaica, and headed towards Latin America. There is no limitation. So I came. I saw outside the box thinking. I saw thinking that literally baffled my mind. I could not understand for the life of me, how could we take a chipped pieces of cloth and produce paper and not touch one tree? It is a consciousness that I even try to embed in the minds of my children, to protect this environment, to touch each cow with love and compassion, to feed them with your hands. Never drop that banana on the floor, but instead take it and offer it as if you offer it unto the divine mouth of God. I saw it here. I was more touched here than anywhere that I have been since the beginning of this year. So I came. I came because there was a greater call, and I answered yes. For each one of us, you would know what that call is. It will go through the conduit of your mind, and it will enter into your heart region. Your entire spirit moves. My answer is yes. I am here as an instrument. You use me as you will. There is no ego, because the body means nothing. The mind is nothing, but only you, that divine source. Let's tap into that source. Let us fill ourselves with that love, that kindness, that benevolence. From the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of my family, I say Dhanyavad. I say thank you to each and every one of you for having me, for sharing that love to me. And in return, I give that love to you in abundance. So thank you very much.